Let's get stuck in. Let's go straight away, monkey. Let's go.
Oh my
Let's
God. You
do it.
really want to go into controversy, right? Okay.
Let's just
Yeah,
get.
go on. Go,
Let's
do,
rip off
do.
that band-aid, as they say.
There
Let's
you go.
talk about Kamala. Let's do it.
All right. This article comes out as is where Kamala Harris stands on cannabis as she prepares to accept the Democratic presidential nomination. Now, this is not an article pro or con on Harris. We just want to look at how is she going to treat cannabis as a presidential candidate. Okay. Voters this November will likely see the first major party presidential candidate who supports cannabis legalization at the top of the ticket after Vice President Kamala Harris is now expected to receive the Democratic nomination after Joe Biden made his historic announcement that he's exiting the race. Unlike Biden, Harris backs complete end to federal cannabis prohibition. That's interesting. She's called for legislation as early as March 2024 in a closed-door meeting with marijuana pardon recipients. And during her time in the Senate, Harris has sponsored comprehensive legislation in addition to other incremental cannabis reform measures. But this wasn't always her position. This is what the article wants you to see. We're painting it as it was and as it appears now. Okay. The current vice president has undergone a significant evolution on the issue as she oversaw cannabis cases as a prosecutor and campaigned against cannabis legalization ballot initiatives in California while running for state attorney general. She was openly dismissive of reform and at one point laughed off a reporter's question about potential policy change. That's no longer the case, however. Harris has framed legal legislation for legalization as a key criminal justice issue, calling prohibition a failed policy that has disproportionately impacted minority communities. As vice president, she has repeatedly touted the administration's move to issue mass pardons to people who have committed federal cannabis possession offenses and direct a scheduling review that led the Justice Department to recommend reclassifying cannabis, that is from a Schedule 3 to a Schedule 1. She also privately called for a broader reform. Put simply, she ultimately secured her party's presidential, if ultimately she secures her presidential party nomination, Harris will become the most cannabis-friendly major party presidential nominee in presidential history in the U.S. We have a look at where Vice President Harris stands on cannabis. It gets pretty wordy. There's tons of sound bites and just clips in here. I will try to avoid the repetitiveness here, but there is quite a bit of that in here. So Harris made much of the administration's cannabis clemency efforts, applauding the president's mass pardons of thousands of people who committed federal cannabis possession offenses. She's also embraced the scheduling review Biden directed in October 2022 that ultimately led the Justice Department to recommend moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substance Act. In March, Harris hosted a group of pardon recipients at the White House for a roundtable event promoting the clemency action. She called on the Drug Enforcement Administration to follow through on rescheduling as quickly as possible while privately reaffirming her belief that we need to legalize cannabis. The issue is stark when one considers the fact that on the schedule currently, cannabis is considered as dangerous as heroin and more dangerous than fentanyl. That's crazy when you think about that. You know, fentanyl is a Schedule 2, cannabis is a Schedule 3. One will kill you, one won't.
And one will kill you with like
backwards.
a quarter of a gram or something. It's not even
right.
like you need a lot. It's like that shit is deadly.
You smoke a quarter pound of weed, you're basically going to sleep it off for a while. And that's what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's crazy like that. With respect to pardons, as advocates have been quick to point out, there are still an estimated 2,800 people currently in federal prison for cannabis convictions that aren't limited to simple possession. These are the people that might have had some above a certain amount and also listed with intent to distribute or trafficking or something of that minor situation, but not just simple possession. Multiple groups, including immigrants and those who have been charged with selling cannabis, were excluded from the presidential pardon. So you had to be a citizen. There you go. Symbolically, however, the announcement represents a paradigm shift in federal cannabis policy. As recognized that a majority of cannabis convictions happen at state level, the administration also took the opportunity to urge governors in states across the U.S. to follow Biden's lead and use their own authority to grant similar relief. Now, Mackie, what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Didn't we covered this when Biden initially said, "Oh, we're going to release all these people who are in federal prison for cannabis possession," and there was like 3 people.
Yeah, those are the people that actually got released from prison. And later on in this article, we can jump ahead to this point. They talk about how many people are actually have received action on it. And while Harris is saying that's tens of thousands of people, the Justice Department says more accurately, it's more like I think they said 13,000 people, not tens of thousands, but those 13,000 people mostly were people who just had records expunged, so they no longer have a federal drug conviction on their records. So they were not, most of them were not in jail, in other words. So they were not, quote unquote, released, but they were pardoned. So it's good though, because at least that means it's off their records, and they can, they can get federal housing, they can apply for jobs without having that dragging them down. So, but it's there. To say under the current administration, the president also signed into law the first piece of standalone cannabis reform legislation that was designed to streamline cannabis research. However, the administration has also faced criticism over anti-cannabis actions, including multiple budget requests that proposed maintaining a ban that has long prevented Washington, D.C. From using its local tax dollars to implement the sale of cannabis. So in D.C., that you can have medical cannabis. I think I've talked about this before, but maybe some of our users haven't heard me complain about this. It's crazy. They want medical cannabis, and the residents of DC are in favor of recreational cannabis because the federal government, though, is in charge of the certain rules in the Washington, DC area. They have blocked recreational cannabis in DC, so I love this part about it. DC has gone around and decided that, okay, what we're going to do then is all you have to do is walk into a dispensary and you declare that you need medical cannabis. You can self-certify and you can buy weed. How's that? I love those when people have innovative solutions to problems. But that's what DC has done there. But it would be a lot easier if they would just say, okay, we have a recreational system. Here it is, and we're done. But even Biden and Trump both, nobody has allowed DC to go ahead and become recreational. It's one of those crazy things. The Justice Department, meanwhile, has repeatedly defended the federal court, defended in federal courts the ongoing ban of gun ownership by people who use cannabis, arguing that cannabis consumers pose a unique threat and comparing them to people with mental illness. Now, I'm not sure if the Justice Department's action fall under what the presidents are doing, because as we know, these things are just so freaking crazy out there. But I think what the Justice Department here is saying is that the law is written this way, and this is how we're going to enforce it until you change it. So that's not so good. Also, under the current administration, U.S. Customs and Border Protection have faced scrutiny for using resources to seize cannabis from state legal businesses in New Mexico. Now, we talked about this before. Because the Customs Border Patrol is tasked to enforce cannabis possession X number of miles away from a border, any legal cannabis that happens to fall into that area, if they're making a sweep, is confiscated because, quote unquote, it's not federally legal. So even though it was grown state legal, if it happens to fall in that area when they come in there with the sweep, they lose the weed. So that
this article is long, right? I mean, I'm just because I'm still trying to find out where you were from when you went moved from the article. This is long.
It's a long article. Let's cut to the chase here. But anyway, cutting back to the chase, I did read through the article, and we'll get to some key points. When she was a senator, Harris sponsored the MORE Act, which was supposed to legalize cannabis. This is one that Schumer was pushing back in the day. MORE Act was killed because, well, we had no cooperation within the parties at the time. And so it died. So she has been in favor of such things as this. She was not in favor of a recreational legalization of cannabis while she was in California. So that was interesting that she was in favor of medical, but then she wasn't in favor of recreational. But once it became legal, then she wanted the state to rewrite the laws to support it. So it's a convoluted situation here with her past and her present don't seem to match up with the cannabis things.
Yeah, politicians flip flop all the time, man. She's a politician. This is what we is what we see from them.
Now, currently, what she's saying is that she supports cannabis legalization. I don't know how you get that passed though, because a president can't just wave a wand and make that happen. It has to go through Congress, and we all.
Well, people have to do research to know that she can make these promises, and then when she gets into power, she ain't gonna do shit. Joe Biden said the same thing. Do you remember?
Actually, it was her that said it for him, though. He never.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was her who said it on her behalf.
Yeah, she screamed it on stage while they were both on stage, but it never the words never left his mouth. They left her lips, not his. Yeah. So it was interesting like that, though. But we don't really know where this is going. But I would say that we have a better chance with Harris than we've ever had with any other presidential candidate, having a candidate that is at least highly favorable to cannabis. Don't know if it's going to become legal, but I feel like that if Congress would send her a legalization bill, that she would sign.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just skeptical, not only because she's a politician, and politicians are all fucking liars, and we've been offered this promise so many times before by many politicians, and it never fucking happens. But she's got some dodgy history, man. When she was a prosecutor in California or something, where she held 1,500 people back and kept them in prison for longer so she could use them as cheap labor or some shit like that. And what
I don't remember those those articles were not in here, things like that at all. So I really have no idea what that is all.
Yeah, and it's just fucked, man. It's just,
well, the race is becoming tighter. Since she entered the race, it's actually becoming tighter and tighter. So because if you look at the polls, 90% of the American voting public is in favor of medical marijuana, and 70% of the voting public is in favor of recreational marijuana. I feel like that Harris will actually use this in her campaign, to get votes. I mean, my gosh, why not? It's a huge thing. If she says, "Yeah, I'm going to make it legal, I'm going to sign it," she may end up picking up a few votes, and it certainly won't hurt her. So I do expect this to be thrown out in the campaign once she has her nomination.
Yeah, man.
Interesting. We're going to have to hold on and see, guys. This is going to get hot fast.
Yeah, well, we'll keep you all informed as this progresses, obviously. What do you think, Billy? You haven't said much on this one. What's your take on this?
I'm still unsure. Again, like you say, she's a politician, so history doesn't really say anything. It's whoever's paying her the most at the time, isn't it? That's how it generally goes with these guys. So it's who's paying out and when is really what way she's going to vote for. And I mostly see it's pharmaceutical people paying them to keep it how it is, to keep the status quo at the minute.
Curious.
So they're the ones making the money.
I don't have this answer. Can cannabis businesses contribute to campaigns?
Yeah, that's a fucking interesting question. Indeed.
Possibly not, because it's federal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't know.
That's a good question, man. We have to look into that and come back next week with that one.
If that, because they were doing it, but that's a state campaign, though. They were doing it in Florida.
The campaign contributions are considered as free speech, right? And would you be able to restrict free speech of somebody like that?
Technically, yes, but the federal government could jump in and pull strings and say ill-gotten gains or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't really. It's a great question, but I don't have that answer, though.
Well, that's why you can't process the money federally, because it's illegal federally. So I shouldn't think you'd be able to make a donation to a federal politician.
There are cannabis banks that do exist right now. The fees on these banks, because of the situation, they're higher, but they do exist. And cannabis businesses do have places to run their money through. So I'm sure that they could get money into the campaigns. If that's a legal thing, and if they wanted to, I really don't know. But that would be interesting, because if she's positive cannabis and Republicans come in as negative cannabis, what would you do if your campaign, if that's your business, Yeah, I don't know. This is going to get interesting really fast.
Yeah, definitely.
We have two polarized sides here, definite clear cut. One says no legalization, one says absolute legalization.
Well, I don't think that's correct. I think one side says it's up to the states, and the other side says we'll legalize.
Actually, there is a bill going through the House of Representatives, Republican-sponsored bill right now that is seeking to force the government to keep cannabis at Schedule 1 and lock it in forever, kind of situation like that. So there is active work being done by the Republicans to block even rescheduling at this point.
Damn.
So it's going to get bad, man.
And we'll keep you all informed, everybody, as things move forward over the next few months. It's going to be very interesting.
That's
But
right.
let us know what you all think in the comments. Let us know what do you think about Kamala Harris. You think that she'll legalize if she wins the election? You know, do you think her past is dodgy? What do you think about Kamala Harris there? And what else did we mention as well? Man, mentioned a little something else at the end there, which would have been a good discussion for the comments too. Can't remember.
Do
what
you
it
think
was.
the Republicans will legalize it and turn it back to the states? Is the other question, you know?
Yeah. You know, let us know what everybody thinks. It'll be an interesting conversation. But of course, the conversations in the comments have to be polite and respectful. Don't be a dick. Yeah, good story. I like this one. This is my kind of shit. Let's see what happens next. If you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you for the full show on Sundays on youtube.com/high on homegrown. Thanks for watching.